Hey everyone, Drew Reynolds here from Common Good Data. Folks, today I want to start with a question, which is, have you noticed that it's summertime out there? I'm hoping that for you, the summertime feels a little bit more relaxed. Maybe we're a different pace of work. And my work, it actually gets a little bit busier, but because with lots of reporting, it ends a fiscal year and whatnot. But ultimately, in the summertime, things do slow down a little bit, at least for many of you. Your staff are out on vacation, maybe meetings are getting rescheduled. Sometimes programs will pause or shift during the summer, especially for those that serve youth kind of on school year schedules and things like that. I suppose if you're doing a summer camp, maybe you're super busy right now. But for many people in organizations that are operating during the summer, things tend to slow down a little bit and has a different type of pace. And you're not necessarily fully in execution mode. And it's kind of an opportunity, I think, for you to take some time back to do some reflection on your work and to do some important planning work. Because I think actually the summertime is some of the best time to do some of the deeper planning and thinking and reflecting on your work that you don't often get a chance to do during the kind of more fall, winter, and spring, or sometimes for those of you who work with youth on school schedules, right? Now the challenge is that there's sometimes a tendency to sort of maybe take a step back in the summer, and you've been through a long year, you're a bit tired, your team is tired, people are going on vacation, and then all of a sudden summer that you think is going to be so long, all of a sudden it's August and you're back into it again. I know that gets me almost every year. I feel like summer should be longer than it is. However, you are, as an organization, kind of sometimes miss that opportunity, right? To take this time to do some reflection and planning, and all of a sudden it's back up and that time is gone. So I think that maybe summer can be seen as maybe a bit of a strategic window. Now, I want to be clear, take your vacation, take some time off. I plan on taking some time off. I hope you do too. But in between some of those vacation times, maybe when your programs are not necessarily up and running at full speed, it's a great chance to have a bit of a maybe strategic window in your summer here to be able to do some time of thinking and planning. So take some time to take a step out of your day-to-day, take a look at what you're doing, and then maybe start to think intentionally and do some planning around what you want your next year to look like. Now, many organizations will do this through something like a formal retreat, for their staff. Maybe if you're working with a board of directors, you'll do a board of directors retreat over the summer. It's a great time to catch them because when they're in the summer, sometimes their pace is a little bit slower. You might be able to catch them for coming on a board retreat that might be more difficult during the year. But it's a good time to try and see if that will work out, to bring some of your people together, do some thinking, do some planning. Now, when you get started with your planning, certainly here at the Common Good Data podcast, we're always talking data. We're always talking about finding ways to demonstrate impact, understand what your outcomes are, and communicate that in ways that drive funding. And so I would say if you're starting and doing some thinking around some planning this summer, maybe take a look back at your outcomes. Not sort of the what you do, the how you do it, the activities, all the logistical stuff that just kind of basically fills up your inbox every day, right? I want you to take a minute and say, okay, in the last year, what can I say changed in the lives of the people we served? Just to take that question to start. What changed in this past year in the lives of the individuals that you served? I guess I'm thinking in terms of school years here for those of you who do work with youth, but you can imagine it over the first 2 quarters if you're kind of more of a calendar year person. So as you're thinking about it, what changed, right? And if you feel like it's hard to answer that question, or you feel like there's positive change, but you just don't feel like you can kind of grasp it, that's a sign that you really want to be thinking more intentionally about how you're doing some of your data evaluation and outcomes work. Because if you can't really say that and answer that question very clearly and succinctly and basically right off the cuff, that means there's work to be done. And the challenge is that you have the next year to try and work on it and solve that, so that when you come around a year from now in the summer, you'll be able to answer that question more confidently. So a way to think about it is, you might be thinking, hey, we've done a lot of work, but maybe I don't really have a good or sharp sense of what success looks like in this organization and how we can sort of measure that in ways that are easy and understandable to the audiences that we care about and that we are always engaging. Volunteers, donors, board members, grant officers, whoever that may be for you. So when you get together, maybe spend some time planning this summer. Again, you could do something informally. You could do something more formal like a staff or a board retreat or something along those lines. But however you decide to do that, I might just suggest to bring some people together and ask that question again. what changed this past year and what do we hope to change in the next year? What change do we want to see? What evidence will we accept that there has been a positive change in the work that we're trying to create out there in the community and with those that we serve? So I wrote a little bit about this actually on a blog post. So if you go over to commongooddata.com/blog, you'll see that there's a post there about a data and impact plan. You check it out. Go research that post and you can see kind of in detail what you might want to include in a data and impact plan and how that could be useful for you. And try to answer some of those key questions. What are you trying to achieve? How will you know if you're making progress? What do you actually need to track? How are you going to use that information? And so that way, everything is kind of set up such that you understand what that change is going to be. And you build everything else that you're doing around that strategy and that outcome that you're trying to accomplish. So the key here is that you start, a lot of times we use the term backwards design. You start with the change you want to see, and then you build and design programs to meet that change. Sometimes we do that the other way around. We think, oh, I want to run this program, and now I need to invent some type of outcome that we're going to accomplish because we've done this cool program. I want you to spend some time this summer trying to fight that tendency and instead start to think, what do I want the change to look like? And then decide what programs or activities that you want to include that you think will be the best options that you have to help accomplish that outcome or goal. Sometimes that means over the summer too, you have to look back at some of the programs and services you've been working on and maybe ask that question, do we need to continue doing this? Because if it's not a good fit and it's not maybe realizing the type of outcome that you're hoping to bring about, it might be time to revisit it. So as you're thinking about this practically, some ideas, let's say you start with a retreat. Begin with a bit of a reset here. Ask that question, what did you learn this past year? What are 2 to 3 outcomes that really matter for next year? Then go back and check and see if that really matches what you're doing and make changes if you need to. And then kind of tighten that up a little bit. What are some new things that you might need to measure to stay on track? Maybe just make sure that you're gathering all that required data for any grants or funders that are looking for certain things, but also making sure you're staying true to the things that you most care about when you're measuring those outcomes. And then finally put it back into place again. Now, some of you may already have something like a data or impact plan. You could also imagine something like a logic model or a data collection plan. And there's lots of different terms for that type of document. And if you have one, maybe you can revisit one that you already have. If you don't have one, now is the time to create one. And I'm telling you, you do not have to create some large 50-page gigantic document with a bunch of jargon. That's not very helpful. Even if it's just 1 page or 2 pages or 3 pages, 1, 2, or 3 is better than 0. So start somewhere and just say, hey, these are the things that we want to see as the change. This is how we're going to measure them, and this is where it lines up with our programs and activities. So in closing, as you move through the next few weeks, whether you're heading on a vacation, catching your breath, or just enjoying a slightly lighter schedule, take some time for reflection. Pull that team together, or if you want to do it individually, that's fine too. But just make sure you spend some time intentionally thinking about and revisiting your outcomes, getting clarity on the plan that you want to have for next year. And so that when the fall hits and the students are back in session and they're joining your programs, for those of you who do youth and student work, or otherwise, if they're other folks who are just back from vacations and back into reality mode again, you are ready to hit the ground running and have those clear things in place so that you can have the biggest impact on the communities that you serve. Because ultimately, that's why you're in this work, to make that big impact. So anyways, I hope this is useful for you. Take some time, reflect, enjoy the summer, go on vacation, but also make sure you take a little bit of thinking for next year. As always, learn more about our work at commongooddata.com. We'd love to see you on the website, and thanks so much for listening to the Common Good Data Podcast.